All right. How's everybody doing? I thought I'd throw a little music out there. I'm sure Facebook will probably block that, but that's okay. Welcome back, everyone, to another live immigration Q&A with myself and Alicia Backman-Bahari, my fearless co-pilot here in this edition of the Immigration Live Q&A. I wager to say, Alicia, that this is one of a kind. I don't know of any other immigration lawyers out there that are doing this, and wow, we've been going at this, at least from the early days. It's probably been over 5 years since I've been doing this, and I love it. It's the highlight of the week, and it's great to no longer have to do it on my own. It's great to have you here. So how's your week been?
It's been an interesting week, Mark, and I've had some good success stories in terms of clients getting their applications processed. So that's fantastic. And I just helped a lovely couple get their application in through the PNP. And there's all sorts of new wrinkles because, of course, as we know, as of September 22nd, all of the non-express entry linked applications for PNPs have to go through the new PR portal. And so there's some
Yes.
wrinkles there. And even as part of that process, there are some tricky little things that immigration has contradictory instructions in their instruction guide, for example, and how to sign the documents in the forms. So it's always a learning experience to be working in immigration law because immigration is changing their policies. There's things that are inconsistent as they're rolling out these new portals and their mandatory online filing. So definitely everybody, it's something to constantly be checking back about and making sure that you are able to get right so that when you're filing this application and taking all this time, like this is people have been working for years to try to get the nominations under these PNP programs, and it's your only shot to get it right now if your CRS by itself is not that high. So
Yeah,
do be really careful with these applications.
absolutely. And it's interesting too. People need to understand that with this online filing, especially for the PNPs that are not express entry,
Mhm.
if you get it wrong, you guys, you're not going to know about it for a long time. These are not going quickly, and the acknowledgments of receipt, and when they kick things back, your PNP nomination could have expired by the time you get that refusal. So gone are the days when you can just file, and if you get something wrong, well, I know I can go back in the pool. So it's and back into candidacy for that province. So you need to pay close attention to it. Um,
Mhm.
all right. Well, let's see who's tuned in here. Let's clear some space off. So we've got Jeet here. Oh, let's see. It says here, here's some internet issues. So your video is not working properly. I don't know. We'll see if this is still the case for everybody there. If anyone else is having technical difficulties, please let me know. Jeet, it may just be on your end. We'll see. But you are on Facebook, right? So it's entirely possible that Facebook just finished blocking because I played a little music. I better stop saying Facebook because their audio is probably scrubbing what I'm saying. And they're like, oh, he doesn't like us. Fine, we're not going to promote it. Okay. Anyways, those of you who are tuning in on on all the other platforms that we're broadcasting to, we've got Lovepreet, who's over in Brampton, Ontario. Great to have you. Thanks for connecting in. We've got Diana Lopez. Hello, Diana, also on YouTube. And make sure you guys that if you're tuning in, click in the link below. I should say post in the comment and let us know where you are tuning in from. Okay, let's see who else we've got here that's connecting in. We've got questions piling in. Hold off on your questions for just a little bit. We'll get to those in a second. Okay, we got another confirmation. Hurry over in Facebook says it's okay. Great, thank you for, I'll give you some applause. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. Some late applause for confirming that. Thank you. Okay, and we've got Anthony who's over in Etobicoke. Great to have you. So you've got a good representation. If you're overseas, we love to hear from you as well. Okay, well, Alicia, one of the things that I talked about yesterday before we jumped in was just some of the experiences that I've been having. And one of the ones that's the most painful for me, and I know we receive these, these consults all the time, is situations where we get, oh boy, basically we have a consult booked and the scenario presented to us is something we can't fix. So I talked about this a little bit yesterday, individuals who apply through programs thinking that they're eligible. And this is the hardest because they've waited a year or however long it takes for them to ultimately decide that, no, you're not eligible for this program. And I had someone who had submitted through the TR to PR pathway using a DLI school that was not postgrad work permit eligible. And she did not know, she didn't read the fine print in the guide for the TR to PR pathway to realize that she wasn't eligible from that school under the international grad category. But she didn't know until now, like literally a week ago.
Oh, no.
And so you can imagine someone who's also has a bridging open work permit that's been issued on that program last year, and the permit's expiring in December. So, so what do you do? Like, I don't know. We're going to submit a response to the procedural fairness letter, and we're basically going to beg and grovel. And I don't think an officer, technically has the authority to just ignore the fact someone doesn't qualify, but what else can you do? So we're going to submit a short little request and just see if some miracle happens. Cause sometimes it does. And, but it breaks my heart when I have to have those discussions, and people just don't know what they don't know. And I can't tell you how many times, Alicia, I've had people who have taken that massive plunge and said, okay, Mark, I've got my whole express entry application ready. I've even taken your course. It's all good. I don't really need to hire you, but I'll just get the peace of mind, even though I know it's perfect. And then we look at it, Alicia, and then 2 hours stretches to 2.5 hours to 3 hours for the initial review, because I'm identifying areas that they had no idea were going to set them for one path, and that path was refusal. So you layer that on top of the many, many emails that we get coming in from people now after a long stretch that are saying, hey, I got my passport request, or I've landed in Canada. And, and many of them go to our Healthy Immigration Law Google reviews and leave reviews. And you can actually go to our site, which is also really fun. Igor's done a little bit of changing here to our site, which makes it a little bit fun. But we pulled up some of our clients, and we just posted some of their responses here because we absolutely love to share the stories. So you've got this heartache on one side, Alicia, coupled with these positive experiences that are coming back. And so, boy, I just wish people would reach out first and even for an initial consult so that they can save themselves from this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's tough, right? Because people want to do it themselves. And if there's one little thing that you don't know, that will derail your entire application. And if you're confident that you're doing it correctly, you probably don't know. So it's a tricky situation to be in. We love working with people who are taking the initiative, who are watching videos like this, who are researching, who really care about their applications, are being honest in their applications, but they need to make sure that they get it right. So we love working with you guys.
Yeah.
So.
And it's hard, you guys, because we get out here and there's so many people online saying, you can do it yourself, it's easy. And they almost make you feel like you're somehow inadequate or stupid if you have to hire someone to help you, or you feel you need to. They give this impression that it's so easy. And then us, Alicia and I, we know that if you retain us, that you're going to have a better shot at getting your application approved than if you file it on your own. But people say, oh, they're just money grubbing lawyers looking to get your money. And that is simply not the case. And, go check out our Google reviews and see whether or not our clients think we actually care about them. But anyways, that's kind of the world we're in. And, I didn't mean to get on the sales soapbox here, but oh my goodness, you guys, I had 15 consults this week. The 14th one is going to happen this afternoon. But I would say at least half of those are situations where I couldn't just easily fix the situation. So an ounce of prevention, right? Mm-hmm. That's the key. All right. We have LinkedIn in the house as well. Everin, it's great to have you. So we got Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And in New York, great to have you connecting in. It's good to see you as well, Hamza. Thanks for connecting with us. We've got Diana. She says, London, Ontario. I'm moving to Calgary on Sunday. Wow. There's some applause. She's coming to your territory, Alicia.
Nice. Welcome, Diana.
Very cool. And we've got Huria, who's also over there on Facebook. She's in Calgary, so we've got quite the Calgary connection. And Kyria says, losing at work, but love the lives. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but don't get yourself fired, you guys. Okay. All right. Let's see who else we've got here. it's nice to see that people on Facebook are connecting in. We haven't had always a good shot. So yes, Kiri is over in London, and I think we've given most of our shout outs. Oh, we've got G2D2, greetings from Tunisia. Awesome. We've got Stephen over in London, Ontario, a good Ontario connection here. And let's see what else we have here as we zip through there. Kabir's over on LinkedIn, and Kabir's over in Vancouver. Fantastic. So we've got a really good group of people today, Alicia, and we really appreciate all of you guys tuning in. This wouldn't even be possible if it wasn't for you guys that are coming live. Make sure that if you're watching on whatever channel that you subscribe, or if you're watching on YouTube, that you connect with us via LinkedIn as well. And the Canadian Immigration Institute is the flagship for our outreach to the community and to the world. And so we are super, super excited to have you joining us. Okay, let's jump in here and let's dive into some specific questions here. I'm going to give some shout outs to those on LinkedIn here. And we don't have as usually YouTube dominates, which we love YouTube, but I'm going to jump right to Satara here and see what her question is. So she says, "Hi Mark, can we use a job bank ad for the BCPNP and LMIA at the same time, but for two different potential employees? As for BCPNP, 14 days is good enough, and for LMIA, it was more than a month. So can we use a job bank ad?" So this sounds like Satara is probably a consultant or a business owner. Can we use a job bank ad for the BCPNP and LMIA at the same time, but for two different potential employees?
Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting because each of the provincial nominee programs have kind of a market test requirement depending on what kind of stream you're applying under. And so take careful care in checking what's going on with the BCPNP to see which stream your client is applying under. So yes, you do have to show in most circumstances that the employer has advertised and recruited for this position. And when the employer is also advertising and recruiting for a labor market impact assessment, then of course it does have to be posted on Job Bank for 4 weeks, usually continuously, depending on what kind of whether it's a high wage or a low wage job. If you're also using those same advertisement and recruiting efforts for the BCPNP requirements, make sure that you're looking at the specifics that the BCPNP requires, which is different than what Service Canada requires for the LMIA in some circumstances. So you might be able to, but it depends if you're meeting all the specific program guidance for your province and for your stream. The other thing that I will say is that, there's interesting changes afoot because, of course, we have technical requirements of implementing the new tier system. So that's something that I wanted to mention today in our live also, is that because tier is rolling out, so this change from NOC 2016 to 2021, that's going to happen November 16th. And so a few of the provincial nominee systems have actually completely shut down. So BC is one of them, where they are no longer functioning until they've switched everything over to tier. And so if people have profiles under the BCPNP, they need to make sure that they qualify under the new streams, that when it's retooled and the BCPNP program opens up again after November 16th, that they are now qualifying and they're meeting their tier and their NOC requirements under the new description under tier. So be careful with this transition time right now from now until November, mid-November.
Yes. All right, next question. This one's from, let's see, who do we have? Kutan. Kutan says, "Hey, Mark and Alicia, currently in the expression of interest pool, do provinces look at each and every profile, or is there some kind of streamlining process? My NOC code is 1228.
Streamlining process.
Yeah, I can I'll give you a little bit of background on this. So Catan, each province does have access to, say, an express entry pool, the pool for searching through candidates. They have certain things that they can see. They can't see whether you've selected them only or every other province. So from an express entry standpoint, and I'll let Alicia touch on the actual PNP process, but when it comes from express entry, those streams, when they're pulling people out through, say, the human capital priority stream, or those like the express entry stream for Alberta, where it's just a passive process, they do have access to see your profile in the pool, but not all the data, just like your work location, things like that, your NOC code. Yeah, but in terms of, how the systems work. Do they manually do it? I think they have a way of extracting it and isolating certain candidates that are on their designated list. But with the various provincial nominee programs, and when you're applying to them directly and expressing interest, what are your thoughts on that, Alicia?
Yeah, each province has probably at least 6 to 10 different substreams, right? So it's tricky to say in terms of what their eligibility criteria are. Some of them are express entry linked and some of them are not express entry linked. So some of those are paper-based applications, and those ones are normally separate and apart from express entry. So depending on what expression of interest pool you're under and which province, they're going to be able to see different things in your application. So it's tricky to answer this question, Kutan, without getting a little bit more information about which province and which streams you've applied under.
Right. Okay, next question. This one is it's from Chaudhry. It says, kindly guide PR application ECAS status changed in process. Oh, ECAS status changed in process from application received after a long time, AOR, biometrics, PAL, MP, all done before. What does in process mean? Oh, that's one, my friend. I'm not sure we're going to be able to handle for you there. Any thoughts on that, Alicia?
So
It's kind of
immigration
hard to
has these,
understand exactly what's going on, but
yeah, and I'm assuming that you're looking at what's going on in terms of your looking at GCMS notes, or you've done a case status update. So immigration has these cryptic comments in terms of what they say their application processing is for your file. And
yeah,
in process basically means they're working on it, and they could be working on it for a day or 2 weeks or a month or 5 months or maybe a year. So it's a fairly broad in process kind of status update. So it depends when you submitted that application. Keep in mind the average processing times are super long still. So
yeah.
for FSW applications, it's 26 months is what they're saying for FSW applications.
Here's a fun one, Alicia. This is back to LinkedIn from Kabir. He says, hey, I wanted to find out, does even 1 hour spent in Canada count towards the full day for the 1095 day calculator? And then there's a little bit of a follow-up here. Let's see if we can find this. He says, for example, my flight is at 2 a.m. on January the 1st. Can I count that day towards the 1095, or would that not be possible? Please let me know. Thank you. Also have to say you, Alicia, and your entire team just rock, simply the best. That's how you get your question answered for sure.
So Kabir, these are technical little details in terms of how you count your residency obligation, right? So take a look. I believe there is some program guidance in terms of what qualifies as a day. And so
Yeah.
there are some interpretation guidelines under the Interpretation Act, and there are some specific immigration specific interpretations of that. And I would have to go back and look it up and double check to be able to answer whether an hour is sufficient. Normally, and it also depends if you've actually physically entered Canada or if you're just in transit. So if you're still in transit and you've not actually technically entered Canada, then that could be an issue. So just, are you actually entering on that hour?
Yeah. And really, Kabir, we do recommend that you book a consult. But if you were to flip it around and say your flight was leaving Canada at 2 a.m., to depart, can you count that day? Well, it may be possible. In some cases, like Alicia indicated, part days can be every part day can be counted as a full day for the
Yeah.
purposes of some, calculations. And so, lots of people throw out, yeah, part day counts. They'll throw that out and say, yeah, it's no problem. But trust me, you have to be very careful when you're cutting the line very finely, and what you can actually prove, and everything from when your passport is swiped saying you've left the country, right? And those are some of the factors that people just don't talk about. They're just so quick to say, oh yeah, part day, it counts as a full day, but it's not always that simple. All right. Okay, so we've got Kabir there. Okay, the next question let's see who's up here. Let's get Deanna here. Hi, as a spouse of a graduated student that applied for a postgrad work permit, should I wait to extend my open work permit until he receives his approval? Do I still need a 3 payslips from his knock AB job to apply? Thanks so much. So I'm not
Mhm.
sure. She says she's a spouse of a graduate student that applied for postgrad. I don't think we know if Diana is in Canada or outside Canada. I'm not sure. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, share your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, so Diana, check the immigration operational guidance in terms of when a spouse can apply for that open spousal work permit. And you're right that there's a tricky little time between when your Canadian student spouse has completed their program of studies under that study permit and they're still in that process of applying for, they have applied for the PGWP, but they haven't received it yet. And so there's a tricky time period there because normally if you're getting that open spousal work permit, then if it is an open work permit that the spouse has under PGWP, your spouse also has to prove that they are in a high skilled job and that they have a work permit usually that's been granted for more than 6 months. And so if you don't actually have the spouse's PGWP issued yet and you can't prove that it's valid for more than 6 months and that it's a high skilled job, it's possible that the IRCC might refuse you because you can't show that it's over 6 months and it's a high skilled job. So, you know, it is safer in generally to make sure that that PGWP has been approved, but I don't know about where you are or if your status might be expiring if you are in Canada. There's a lot of other moving parts that you'd want to make sure that you've covered.
Gotcha. Okay, this is a follow-up for Catan here. Sorry for the limited information. I'm in the express entry pool. I've selected yes to all provinces and applied to PEI separately. So yeah, so the short answer, like I addressed Catan, is the provinces can't see when they're considering, for example, Alberta or Ontario, they can't see if you've, well, really, even if you've applied to a different province. That's why they ask the questions. They have their mechanisms, and when you agree to share your information, they can definitely find out. But ultimately, when it comes to getting an expression of interest from a province through your express entry profile, if you've selected all provinces, then you're still fair game. Now, obviously, once the process starts when applying, if most provinces, I don't know any that don't ask, have you submitted an application to another province? Because that's an issue for them. Because if you're submitting through multiple provinces, how do they know if you're actually going to stay? So that's something to kind of keep in mind as we're going through that process.
And we'll have to see, Mark, because one of the changes from the minister was that when they're looking at tweaking the express entry draws and having targeted draws, they are saying that they can dictate whether somebody's going to get a nomination under FSW or PNP or CEC.
Yep.
And people may not have such a broad ability to kind of pick and choose which programs. So we'll have to see how that rolls out.
Yes. Okay, let's see. I was looking for one that had popped up. Oh, we'll give Banat a shout out there. Hello, he's over on LinkedIn. Okay. Okay, let's see here. I saw one that kind of related, but it looks like it disappeared. Okay, here we go. So this is from CF. Okay, Alicia. Hi, Mark. I'm FSW Outland. Just landed a month ago. Is it okay to settle in Quebec? I moved to Quebec 3 days after landing. Will it affect when I do my citizenship? CF. I'll tell you what my thoughts are on you leaving 3 days after, but Alicia, why don't you fire away and let me know what your thoughts are.
Okay, so you can basically settle in any part of Canada other than Quebec if you're coming under express entry. So if you're applying and you've been accepted under federal skilled worker overseas application, then you're supposed to settle anywhere other than Quebec. If you did want to go to Quebec, then you should be telling immigration you intend to live in Quebec, and that's where you're going to have to go through the provincial requirement CAQ, CSQ for Quebec specifically, because they have their own provincial system to be able to nominate and accept people to their province. So there is a risk of misrepresentation if you have landed under express entry and you're not eligible for express entry if you're going to be living in Quebec and 3 days after landing, you decide to live in Quebec. So there is for sure a potential and misrepresentation. If immigration wanted to go through and ask you some questions when you apply for citizenship, they might in fact do so.
Yes. Okay, let's shift some gears here. So Kazim says, thanks Mark and Alicia for your YouTube channel and info. Question: how is an Alberta employer defined? You've got some experience with this one, Alicia. What if you're a multinational rep based in Alberta, but the Canadian subsidiary is registered in Toronto?
Mm. And so, Kazim, this can get into an interesting analysis of what your corporate org structure is. Yeah. So,
That was a little quiet. That was a little quiet. Hey, you know what? This type of complexity, your employer should be retaining us to give you some direction and advice on this. And all you have to do is slide over to our website and just click right here on Speak to a Lawyer right here. So that's what we recommend. But Alicia, maybe you can just kind of give a little bit of overview and help Kazim to understand some of the basics of this.
yeah. So, to look at it broadly, in Canada, we have the ability for corporations to be federally incorporated, and then we also have provincial incorporations. And in some circumstances, depending on how complex the structure is, you might have extra provincial registrations in addition to being registered in one province or overall in the entire country. So, for most of the PNP programs, the PNPs want to see that it's a provincially based employer. And really, depending on that ownership structure, the corporate structure, where the directors are, where the work is located, you may or may not fit that definition of being an Alberta employer. So you really have to look at how the corporation has set itself up in terms of organizational structure, but also how employees, where they're working, how they're getting paid. All those things are part of the equation.
All right, Diana's got a little follow-up for us here. She says, yes, thanks, Mark and Alicia. Yes, I've been in Canada for 2 years with an open work permit that is valid until November 30th and was wishing I wouldn't have to stop working. I can prove my husband has a high-skilled job. So,
Yeah. So, Diana, I'd love to talk to you about it and go through your
yeah.
circumstances in more detail. So book a consult. That would be perfect to talk about it. In some circumstances, maybe it is worth the risk that you try to apply and risk the refusal in case you are able to get that implied status to continue to work under the old work permit until you hear back on a decision. So maybe you can prove that you've got that temporary intent. You can prove that your application is, or the PGWP application was filed by your husband, and you can prove he's got a high skilled job. And maybe it's worthwhile to make that application even before he gets that PGWP document issued in his hands. But it really depends.
Yeah. And yeah, that's the biggest issue here is trying to match it up, right? If he had not yet submitted the postgrad work permit application and he wanted to include then, and he had the job already lined up and had the letter and had, then we routinely file those applications. And when you do that correctly, it works. But yeah, trying to match things up and this whole system, is just, it's so volatile right now that you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're in limbo. And you guys know what the processing times are, in excess of 5 months right now. And to be in limbo and then to have the application refused, when it's refused, you have to stop working, something that a lot of people don't talk about enough. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not sure why, like Diana, if you already are in Canada and you were on that open spousal work permit while he was a student, I'm not sure why he wouldn't have included you in his application for the PGWP. So,
Yeah, and I think I can probably answer that. He probably didn't have the job yet, and he probably, when he was filing it, was still looking for that employment, and which is in many cases that's the case. And yeah, we've had a lot of people that have come to us after submitting the postgrad and including a spouse, and not providing any evidence, of skilled work, knock B or higher. Then they got it refused. The spouse's work permit got refused, and then they were counting on being able to continue to work, and then boom, very quickly you're out of options. So it's complex, Diana, way more than people like to make it seem online. And we just recommend you slide over and book a consult, and we can walk through it with you. Okay. Johnson says, hey, Mark, I'm Johnson. I'm Nigerian living in South Korea, but without status here in Korea. Can I apply for a study permit from here because residence is not in the requirements?
And I think I saw another question too, and it was asking about overstays and, if you've been in another country. Often it's the US. Often we get circumstances where people are saying, oh, I'm an overstay in the US. Can I apply to Canada in express entry? And
How about this one here? Oh no, that's not it. Let's see. There's one other one here. I think I saw it. I pulled it up here.
I think I saw it too.
Okay. Well,
Um,
anyways, the same idea here. Anyways.
yeah. So same idea is that misrepresentation can tank your application. So if you have stayed in a country without authorization, then you have to absolutely declare it on your application. So when immigration asks you, your address history, you've got to truthfully put in your address history. If they ask you your travel history, you have to put your travel history in there truthfully. The key comes down to the statutory declaration questions, or the questions that talk about, have you ever been refused a visa, or have you ever been asked to leave a country? And depending on the country that you're in and whether immigration authorities have ever actually contacted you or spoken with you, you've got to answer those questions truthfully. The other thing that sometimes happens is a potential criminal inadmissibility. So, depending on the laws of the foreign country, it may in fact be a crime to have remained there without authorization. Whether that's a crime in Canada depends upon this equation. So you're looking at the foreign legislation, you're comparing it with the Canadian legislation, and then if you are charged in that foreign jurisdiction, does that charge in the foreign jurisdiction actually correspond with something in Canada that would be an offense that is a serious criminality, something that is an act of parliament, so a federal jurisdiction in Canada would say that that is something that carries with it a maximum term of imprisonment of 10 years or more. So it depends. There are many
Mhm.
things that it depends upon.
Yes. Okay. Next we have here is this is Salem. Um, he says, "Thank you for your information. Can I submit my application in the Canadian Embassy in Saudi Arabia instead of submitting to IRCC website where the refusal chance becomes higher?"
No,
No.
Salem, it's mandatory online filing. So unless you're suffering from some sort of disability that prevents you from using a computer or filing that application online, and in some
Yeah.
circumstances there is a disability exception, but in general, the rule is that all applications are mandatory online filing.
Okay. Another one says, "Hi, you are both amazing. Can I apply?" You guys don't have to state that for me to ask a question. I was just joking. Can I apply for a bridging work permit before my postgrad work permit expires and after I complete my PR application?
This is a tough question. So there are many forms of bridging work permits, and there are different subsets and different codes used for each of those different types of bridging work permits, and it depends on which type of PR application you're filing. So for example, guys, I was just talking about my application that I was helping a lovely couple file this morning, and in that case, they were actually nominated under one of the provinces that had an employer-specific requirement. So if you happen to be nominated by a province where there are restrictions on your employment, and it'll say right on the nomination letter, yes, there's employer restrictions and the employer is listed. In those cases, you are not eligible for a bridging open work permit. And I have seen heartache where people did not know this. They booked a consult too late and they were actually refused their bridging open work permit because they applied for a bridging open work permit when they were actually needing to have applied for a Regulation 204C
Mhm.
employer-specific work permit. So it is LMI exempt, but employer specific. So there are lots of moving parts here. You've got to be really careful on what kind of document you're eligible to apply for, depending on what kind of PR application you filed.
All right. Next question. Saram says, "I did my medicals and my PCC in last year, July. I haven't been to India after that. I'm still waiting in the pool now. So do I need a new medical PCC up front when my application gets picked?"
Mhm. So I assume, Sir, you're still in Toronto. So take a look at the ministerial instructions that have just been published. And so I think we sent the link to that on last week's live as well. So if you look for our live last week, you'll have that link to the minister's announcement. You've got to be in Canada. It applies for in Canada applicants. You've got to make sure that your medical was less than 5 years old. But the trick here, and I don't know how you're dealing with this, Mark, because a lot of the
Mhm.
times people don't actually have the 1017B form that's the detailed results. They just have the initial one.
Yeah.
And on that one, you can't tell what your medical status is. And so in the ministerial instructions, or I guess the publication that they've put out through their temporary public policy, they've said that you have to be coded M1, and then it goes through M2, M3, and it has different variations for each. But if you don't know what your M1, M2, M3 coding is, you may or may not fit within this public policy. So that's the wrinkle here.
All right. Next question. This one is, we'll pull this one off here. Oh, I lost it. Come on back. Where'd you go? Okay, this one is from G2D2. It sounds like R2D2. I have a question about the statutory questions on the EAPR. Can you please explain the difference between the fourth and fifth questions? Both are related to visa refusal, and I'm confused between them. So this is where I'm going to do another plug. You guys know, I think at this stage, that the Express Entry course, the masterclass, starts on Monday. And we've got a great group of people that have already subscribed. It's going to be an awesome a set of classes every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 8 a.m. Mountain Time. We're doing it a little bit earlier this time. But in the course here, complete step-by-step walkthrough. I want to jump right into the course, and this will help us because he's basically identifying questions 4 and 5, and I go through this in detail in the course. So if we go here to the EAPR portion, and then this is in the principal applicant or the adult section for completing the personal history. And in the personal history section here, there is a section, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrub through my video so you guys get a sneak peek here at my ugly mug, and going through right here. Okay. I'm going to stop this right here. Now, it's going to be a little bit hard to see this. I'm not sure if I can enlarge it. We'll just leave it like that, but I can see it so I can read it. So these are the questions that are right in there. So it says, has so-and-so made a previous claims for refugee protection in Canada or at a Canadian visa office abroad, in any other country or countries or with the United Nations? Okay, so that's option one is have you made a refugee claim? Then the next one, it's really 4 and 5. So that's 3. And then you can see 4 and 5 here. 4 says, has Mark, we'll say, been refused refugee status or an immigrant or permanent resident visa, including CSQ to Quebec or application to the PNP, or visitor or temporary resident visa to Canada or any other country. So it's asking, have you had a visa refused to any other country, essentially, or Canada? Then the next one says, have you ever been refused a visa again, a permit, denied entry, or ordered to leave Canada or any other country? And it becomes really confusing. So I don't know what I'll answer. I'll give you my response first, and then we'll turn over to Alicia. But you know what? I include the same answer in both. I don't even care. If I have had a visa refusal to the U.S., then I put it in both. And I know what the officers are looking at. They're looking at you appear at a border, and they turn you around and send you back as being refused or entry or denied entry, right, or order to leave. That's all about kind of wanting to come in and they turn you back. And the other is more about submitting applications. But if they say been refused a visa, well, a visa is a visa. And these are overlapping questions. So I put the same detailed explanation in both of them, just because I don't want to take chances. And then they can sort out what they want to do on their end. But what are your thoughts on that, Alicia?
I cannot tell you how many times people answer these questions incorrectly, right? They look at these statutory declaration questions and they just assume, oh, I have to answer no to all of them, otherwise my application is going to get refused.
Mm-hmm.
And that is
Yes.
not
Horrible.
true. And you cannot do that, right? So if the answer to any of these questions is yes, you absolutely have to provide an explanation. And most of the time, when I'm working with clients and we're filing an application for their express entry, if the answer is yes, you might not be able to fit your answer in that tiny little block of text. You've got, a character limit there. So make sure that if you do have a visa refusal, that you're providing a little bit more information in your letter of explanation. You're saying, here's why I was refused, here's when I was refused, and if you actually have that refusal letter or the details about why you were refused, talk about it, bring it out in the open, make sure that you're not sweeping any of this under the rug. And so many people look at that fourth question and it's really long and it's talking about refugee stuff and they think it doesn't apply to them and they don't even read the last part of the question that says, have you ever been refused a visa to Canada or any other country? And those last few words have tripped up more people than you'd imagine, right? So make sure you're looking at any visa refusal, any country, and just like Mark said, there's a difference in terms of applying for an application and never even getting on a plane. But the second question, or the fifth question rather, says, have you actually ever been denied entry? Because they might let you on the plane, but maybe they don't let you in the country or they turn you around.
Yep. The rule is err on the side of caution and disclose. That is the rule. Okay, a couple little shout outs. So we've got Amjad, who's over on Facebook. Hello to you. Good to have you connecting in. And we have got Shahanaz, who is also over on Facebook. So thank you guys for connecting in and letting me know that Facebook is still allowing the stream to go through. Fantastic. Okay, and then I think this is another evolution of that other question. The person is a student in the U.S. with no criminal record, a straight A student. What are the chances of approval? What's the best program to immigrate to Canada in this case? That's a super easy answer.
Yeah, and what I'll say too, also for the other applicant that was talking about being in Korea, if you're looking at a temporary application, like if you're looking at a study permit application or a work permit application to Canada and you're an overstay and you're currently an overstay in another foreign country, that's a strike against you, right? Immigration's looking at whether you have temporary intent. And if you wanted to come on a temporary basis, you're going to have a stronger or a bigger hurdle to overcome.
Yeah.
If you're looking, so if you're looking at that study permit or work permit, but you've been an overstay already, you've got some explaining to do. You've got to really work a lot harder to prove that you have valid temporary intent.
Yeah. All right. This is a cash one, Alicia. Back to express entry. Can you count work experience when you're paid in cash? Boutique says IRCC, count my cash experience.
So take a look at what you can prove, right? Can you actually get the letter from your employer? Can you get that employer letter of support in the employment records? Can it be on company letterhead? Is it going to go through the full period of time that you were employed there? Are you meeting the National Occupation Classification Code? And then if that company was not properly paying you, right? If they weren't complying with income tax rules in the foreign company, and if you weren't declaring that income, you might have an evidentiary burden, right? You might have a difficult time proving that you were doing that job if you don't have any official records about it. And so it really depends on what you can properly prove and whether it's worth the risk for relying on work experience that you may not be able to properly prove.
And G2D2, you are very welcome. He says, thanks for your thorough explanation. Okay, next question is Alex. She says, hey, Mark and Alicia, I did my ECA foreign degree credentials in 2016. I think I need them to renew. I think I need them to be renewed, probably. Would have to have that for EE under CEC?
Yes, yeah.
Excuse me.
So keep in mind that your education credential assessments are only valid for 5 years. And so take a look at the date of those assessments and make sure that they are less than 5 years old. So one of the basic requirements to be able to create your express entry profile is that you have a valid education credential assessment. And if it's expired, you won't be able to properly create your profile.
Yes, exactly. All right. Next question. This one is from Boz. And he says, please let me know. I'm pursuing a 1-year course in Edmonton. Is there any extending postgrad work permits in the upcoming year if I go with a work permit? Guess what my response is, Boz? Alicia, what's your response? How much do you like 1-year programs?
1-year programs are awful. They're terrible. you guys know the rule, right? If you have the minimum for a study permit is that you find a program of education at a designated learning institution that is PGWP eligible. And so this is one thing that Mark brought up at the beginning of this live stream was there are a lot of students who don't realize and they don't go and check the fine print. They maybe are going to a designated learning institution, but if it's not PostGrad work permit eligible, you're done, right? There's no option for you. In certain circumstances, if you have an 8-month minimum program and you apply for your postgrad work permit, you'd only get 8 months, right? If you have a 1-year program and you apply for a PGWP, you only get 1 year. If, however, you do a 2-year program and you apply for your PGWP, you get 3 years postgrad work permit. You get a bonus year. It is the maximization of your studies in Canada. In some very specific circumstances, it might be possible for you to stack your programs. So it's called program stacking, and you'd have to look to see whether both are PGWP eligible, both are from DLIs. You have to change the conditions. You've got to apply for a new study permit and try to stack within a 2-year period both of those programs on top of each other to end up getting a 2-year overall program of studies. Then you apply for your PGWP. So notwithstanding all the craziness that has been happening in the pandemic and the temporary public policies, the general rule is that a PGWP is one and done. So if you've applied for it too early and you've only done your 1 year, you're only ever going to get 1 year. It's not extendable. So other than these temporary public policies, which are technically not extensions, they're technically just magical deliverances from IRCC, in the normal circumstances, it's really hard to get 1 year of Canadian work experience if you only literally have a 1-year PGWP.
Here's a fun one, another express entry one. We cover this in the course as well. Hey, Mark and Alicia, my travel history can't let me enter more than 50 entries. I just had a consultation, you guys, this morning with someone giving them advice on this one. So how can I show the rest of the entries? Please guide.
Mm-hmm. So guys, I had a fabulous client who works for an airline and is part of an airline crew. And so it's pages and pages and pages of spreadsheets of travel histories, right? The problem is that IRCC says that they are not able to properly go through their background security and checks unless people have diligently uploaded all of their most recent entries until they get to the maximum field upload. Depending on what kind of form it is and how you're doing it, it might be 50, it might be 200. There's different ones for different applications. But fill in diligently all the most recent ones in reverse chronological order, and then you're going to have to make sure that you attach everything in a detailed spreadsheet and letter of explanation as a supporting document. So there are ways to do it. Make sure that you don't just stop because you've hit the maximum entry uploads.
All right. Okay, this one always kind of surprises me a little bit. But KP says, can you share your email for us to seek formally application advice and full service agreement? I don't know. Maybe I'm not a very good marketer. I think Holthe Immigration Law, you guys, is our website. This is our law firm, Holthe Immigration Law, and all you have to do is come to our site and click on this massive big red button here, or this one right here, and it will take you right to our firm's website. Then all you have to do is go right here. You find Alicia Backman-Bahari. You click on a 25-minute consult, and you can literally choose the day. So Alicia has family and work that she's finishing up tomorrow, but you can virtually pick your time next week with her, and she has a lot of availability. So you guys need to head over there, and all you have to do is click on the link, confirm the time, and then it will prompt you to book it. So you don't even need to call us or talk to us. You can pick the time that works best for you, and we're literally all here with tremendous flexibility. And I'm positive that if you can't find a time that works with Alicia, there's Chanel, there's Cedric, and little old me here as well. And we're all available to help you. But it's as easy as that. You just come right here, click on that link, speak to a lawyer, and book a consult. And usually within days, no later than the next day. You can find someone that can provide some assistance to you. So that's how you do it. All right. Okay, I got a couple of these, Alicia, and I'm just going to put them up because it's a nice segue into something I want to show people if they haven't heard already. I couldn't find my knock code for Safety Watch. What should I do? Let's see here. Let's go right here. So the course, within the course, I'll actually show you guys right in the course because the masterclass starts on Monday, but you get access to everything right now. If you go into our categories here, and this is exactly what your view will look like. You go to mastering your documents. You go to records of employment right here. This goes into excruciating detail on how to select your NOC. And on the right side here, we have something that I call the NOC selection tool. And I use that with every single one of my clients, whether they subscribe to the course or whether whether they retain us to assist them with their express entry process. We go through the whole process. And so a title, my friend, is it's not quite completely useless. It does form a little bit of a part of the assessment process. But Alicia, how does someone in Patel's situation here, and nice to meet you, Patel, how does someone in Patel's situation, like what do they go about to try, aside from just registering for the course, how do they go about determining their NOC?
Yeah. So Patel, sometimes this can be a tricky process to try to figure out, okay, well, what's my job title? But more importantly, what are the actions that I'm performing? And so this is why the legislation and the ministerial instructions talk about the lead statement. So that opening paragraph, if you go to the National Occupation Classification Code and you look for any job that's on there, it's going to give you kind of an opening paragraph, and then it'll give you sample job titles, and then it'll go down and it'll say what the listed mandatory main duties are. And you need to look at all those. You need to take a look at the job title, but more importantly, you need to look at the lead statement, and you need to look at the bullet points. So what are the main duties that are required for that job? And you need to be making sure that you can say honestly, you are doing the majority of them. And immigration doesn't define the majority. So to be safe, Mark and I always say 75%, right? Make sure that if there's 10 bullet points, you're doing 8 of them, right? So this is where you've got to really figure out lead statement, main duties. Are you meeting 75% of them?
You bet. All right, so let's tackle one that's a little bit meatier, and I'm going to click on the triangle. Some of you repost your comment multiple times because you think maybe I missed it. Well, often there's a reason that I skip past it. Sometimes it's just too specific because we need way more information, and we're not going to give you any direct advice on what to actually do yourself when it comes to choosing a program unless you slide over and actually book a consult with us, because that would be crazy on our part. The reality is the consultations that we do allow us to get all of the information we need to give you proper legal advice, and information sharing, thoughts and direction and ideas about specific aspects of the process that are universal to everyone is no problem. But it becomes really difficult to provide this type of information, and it's negligent on our part to do so. Shahriar says, IRCC says a visit visa holder can apply for a study permit through completion of a prerequisite course. Should I choose this path or apply for a study permit from home? I just got visitor visa recently. We see this all the time, people trying to shortcut the lengthy processing times. We see it with work permits all the time, people coming. I can't tell you how many times I've seen borders crucify people when they try to go to the border to get their document because they say you misrepresented on your original entry. And so, what are your thoughts on that, Alicia?
So the normal rule, everybody, is that you cannot apply for a study permit from inside Canada if you have a visitor visa. That's the normal rule, because they do not want people coming, saying that they're just coming to visit, and then all of a sudden inside Canada applying for a study permit. The normal rule under the legislation is it is not permitted. Most of the time, they want you to apply from outside Canada, just like everybody else, depending on your stream, and you may or may not have the ability to apply for a student direct stream, right? So depending on your country of nationality and residence, you might be able to apply for SDS, and maybe that's going to be a much faster and better option for you. So that's something to consider. In certain limited circumstances, yes, it is possible to go through prerequisite courses and then therefore be able to sometimes qualify for a study permit. But it would be really important to understand why. Why do you want to do that? What is your career plan? What is your previous education? What is your intention for being in Canada? And how do you prove that? How do you make sure that that is all transparent and it makes sense for an officer reviewing your application?
All right, I'm going to just wrap it up with a string of comments. And I'm going to pull all these up and then we'll just kind of wrap it all up in one shot. So Shaggy says, I've heard a lot of allegations that IRCC will reduce the FSW quota starting in the spring of 2023. Do you have any thoughts on that, please? Will no program draw continue for FSW after Bill C-19 implementation? Some immigration consultants are saying that the CRS score calculator will be removed from the express entry system. And then finally, Harshit ends with, what is the trend of CRS scores for express entry programs? So all of these questions are very, very important questions. And as you guys have seen, there's nothing speculated about more than what the world of economic PR is going to look like in Canada. Now, the minister has dropped a lot of hints about some of his priorities. And if you guys want to see what those priorities are and really, really understand where he's going, go to the YouTube channel and click on the very highlighted version, this one right here, the TR to PR, 6 takeaways from the minister's report. If you scroll down here, you can see it's this video right here that has about 39,000 views. There's a reason for it. So this TR to PR, top 6 takeaways, is the minister's report, and there's a link to it, I think, actually in the video itself. There's a report that talks about what the minister intends to do with the TR to PRs that are in, well, the TRs in Canada, all you temporary residents, with respect to options for PR. And like it or not, there are only so many spots to go around. Even if the government is looking to expand the annual levels plans, incrementally over the years, and yes, they are. The reality is the minister has to pick and choose. The new legislative provisions that have come in have given him far greater discretion in how he selects candidates, and that is where the uncertainty comes. I'll give the IRCC credit. They have done a very good job about keeping things tight-lipped. And so sometimes members of parliament or other people will share a little bit of insight as to what they've heard, and maybe the Citizenship and Immigration what do you call it? The standing committee. Maybe something will come across their desks, and then they'll share it with someone, who then will share it with someone else. And yes, sometimes things do leak out, and sometimes those rumors that that people are talking about have a foundation in truth. And the reality is, people do not know exactly what's going to happen until it's actually released by the department. So I try not to speculate as much about things that I don't have direct knowledge about, and be very, very careful, you guys, listening to people who have an invested interest in what they're telling you. In other words, if they say, here's a classic, okay, CRS score is going to close. You need to hire me right now to submit your express entry profile, even though you have 120 points. Hey, 2 years ago, 75 points was enough. And so you've got a shot. So pay me money and I'll file it for you. And by the way, I heard a rumor from government that they're going to do away with this and you won't have any more chances. So if someone characterizes it in that way, do not trust them. Do not. The reality is anything could happen. And those suggestions of, the CRS score, the calculator going away, well, I guess feasibly, it could be possible if the minister was only issuing invitations to people in certain knock codes and they didn't really care what their scores were, as long as they had the skill sets and they met the minimum criteria for the CEC and the FSW or the federal skilled trade. So it's possible, you guys. But at this stage, there has been no inclination that come spring, when he starts to do more targeted draws, that they're going to be the only draws. And you look at other provinces that are doing similar things, like Ontario, where they have the human capital priority. Sometimes they have it more broadly, more open to just certain knock codes. And sometimes the CRS calculation fits in there. Sometimes it isn't as big of a deal. So we're not certain. So the key, and this is how we advise all of our clients, is that you keep all of your options open. You pursue every avenue that's possible. You make decisions in your life that are going to keep doors open, not close them. And that's where the value of the immigration consultation comes from us and our lawyers. We help you to try to prepare yourself no matter what the eventuality is, so that you have the greatest chance of success. And that's where the value is, not guessing and speculation and fear mongering, but understanding what the trends, where they're pointing, and then helping you to make sure you're as well positioned as possible. Check out that video that I did, because I talk specifically about that in this TR to PR, the top 6 takeaways. If you haven't watched it, go watch it, because there is a lot of insight that I provide on where the minister's looking, which is rural Canada, outside of the major centers, outside of Ontario, outside of British Columbia. Heck, come to Alberta, go to the Atlantic provinces, look for other alternatives if you're trying to figure out where you're going to go. But that's kind of the direction. So we'll wrap up with that. But Alicia, do you have any additional thoughts to kind of close off? And our time is far spent here with our lovely little Canada Immigration Live Q&A. Any last parting thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it is a moving landscape. And so if you do have a healthy CRS score, and people are going to say, well, what's a healthy CRS score? What is it, right? Probably over 400, right? Like most of the programs, in order to qualify for most of the PNP programs, you have to have a score over 300. So if you are below 300, you have very limited options. And I just think that people need to know that. But once you hit the 300 mark, you may have eligibility for PNPs. Once you hit the 400 mark, you probably have a better chance for PNPs if you're over the 400 mark. Because they are looking at doing targeted draws, if you're working on that work experience in an occupation that may be something that's economically important to Canada, then you're probably going to have a better chance. But because they haven't told us which ones they're going to pick, go look at Mark's video, look at the list that the immigration minister has said in terms of the occupations that they want to start focusing on. So if you've got one of those occupations in one of those sectors, maybe it is worthwhile for you to create your express entry profile also.
Well, I was going to wrap it up, but I can't help it because these guys keep posting comments on here. So Steven says, that's awesome, guys. Thanks. You bet. You're very welcome. And then Lima says, Mark, are you doing more discounts on consultations? And the very short answer is no. So that was a one-time thing in October, just kind of as a way for our firm to give back. But just like everyone, we have bills to pay and expenses and things like that. And so we do what we can to try to help. And that's why we do these free live Q&As. And like I said, I'd love to see other lawyers, anyone else that's doing what we're doing. And we hope that the efforts that we put in by sharing this information will result in you guys, if you know people that are looking to retain counsel or someone to help them navigate the complexities of immigration, that you would consider our firm, Holy Immigration Law, that you would click, speak to a lawyer and book a consultation and let us help you. And if you go to our site now, Igor's been working really hard at this. You can see there is a ton of new resources that you can go through to help you navigate through the process, and just tons of resources. How it works, and ins and outs, and all the steps, and everything is all embedded now here in our website. And we've worked really hard to build out these sources for you. The next one to appear here is going to be studying in Canada. And I know Igor's working on that frantically today. So we're building out our site as a new source of information. And remember, the Express Entry course starts on Monday. And if you have not yet subscribed to it, do it now so that you have a few days to start going through all of those reams of videos and sample documents and instructions and everything that's all embedded in the Express Entry course, the 6 modules and resource section. So all of this is available, and it's all designed for us to give you guys assistance in a way that you can afford. And so when it comes to the consult discounts, the reason Alicia and I don't like to do that is we've been at this for over 20 years. and it's taken us a long time to build up to where we are. And so the fees that we charge are commensurate with our background. And, you know, if you want to find out how we're doing as a firm with those consults, then go to the Healthy Immigration Law page and just check out the Google reviews. And I always like doing this because, well, it's hard for me because it keeps pulling up our site, but those Google reviews will give you an idea of the experience other people have had when they have retained our firm to help them. So I encourage you to slide over and book a consult with Alicia. Click on that Speak to a Lawyer there. I'm there as well, but Alicia has got lots of capacity. I'm pretty full right now. And so book a consult with Alicia. Come take the course and make sure you head over to our website and check out all these resources that we have here. So it's all available for you guys. And subscribe to the channel. Let people know. Share with them, you know, that the Canadian Immigration Institute is Healthy Immigration Law, and we are a firm full of immigration lawyers. That is who will work directly with you. All right, there we go, guys. I hope this was helpful. I hope that you guys you learned a few things, that you were kind of entertained, and Shaggy Boxer, man, I love that handle. Thank you very much. All right. Okay, guys, take care. Thanks, Alicia.